17. January. Some dates are not just numbers. Some dates breathe. Quiet memories inside. Ordinary calendars lie. 17. January waits. Like unopened letters. Inside my chest. Numbers pretend neutrality. But dates remember faces. And unfinished sentences. This morning felt heavier than other mornings. Without clear reasons. The clock kept moving, while something stayed, refusing forward motion. I didn't announce pain, it arrived silently, wearing familiarity. 17 January knows how to knock softly, without asking permission. I woke remembering things I avoid on safer days. Certain dates whisper instead of shouting, yet echo longer. This date carries weight, not visible publicly, but privately crushing. I tried distraction, music, tea routines. None worked properly. The mirror asked questions I wasn't ready to answer honestly. Some dates reopen, rooms we locked, without healing inside. I remember promises, spoken casually once, then abandoned slowly. January air felt sharper than usual, cutting inward today. I smiled externally, while thoughts collapsed internally without noise. 17 January watched me pretend normalcy with practice skill. Dates remember tones, not just events, but emotional temperatures. This day remembers how you looked when leaving halfway. Not goodbye dramatic, just unfinished silence. Stretching into years, numbers don't ache, but dates do. When attached memories, 17 January holds my unsent messages and deleted drafts, words I rehearsed but never delivered. Still breathing quietly, I carried this date without telling anyone its true weight. People say time heals everything eventually. They underestimate dates. Some days resist healing because they remember too accurately still. I tried rewriting history, but dates stay stubborn, refusing edited narratives. 17 January insists on original versions, not softened recollections. This date remembers the moment I realized love changes quietly. No dramatic explosion, just gradual understanding, settling like dust. I didn't cry loudly. I absorbed loss, professionally and politely. This date marks when I learned how silence hurts, not absence alone, but unanswered expectations, echoing repeatedly inside. 17 January keeps those echoes organized, filed under heart. I functioned publicly, laughed appropriately, worked responsibly, still, but internally paused. On that single date, replaying emotional footage. Some dates become emotional bookmarks inside personal history. You don't revisit entire chapters again, just mark pages. 17 January bookmarked the day hope adjusted its volume, not muted completely, just lowered enough to notice realism. This date taught me how memories mature into quiet companions. They don't scream anymore. They sit beside during reflective moments. I stopped blaming others exclusively and looked inward. That realization arrived on this date, uninvited but necessary. 17 January doesn't accuse, it simply reminds. With uncomfortable honesty, I learned accountability feels heavier than blame, but heals deeper. Some dates educate without offering comfort, only clarity instead. This date clarified what love requires. Beyond emotional fantasy, consistency, patience, presence, not poetic declarations written during highs. 17 January removed romantic filters. From my perspective, it showed reality without background music or dramatic lighting. I didn't hate that lesson entirely, just resisted initially. Growth rarely announces itself pleasantly, especially through dates. Some dates become teachers disguised as emotional setbacks. 17 January taught me restraint and self-respect slowly. I stopped chasing explanations relentlessly. After this day, closure didn't arrive, answers stayed incomplete, yet peace developed. This date represents acceptance without understanding, strength without applause. I stopped waiting for apologies that may never come. 17 January helped me release expectations quietly and finally, not forgetting completely, just loosening grip on imagined outcomes. Some dates don't hurt because of events, but because growth demands surrender of old identities we loved once. This date marks when I let go of who I was. I became someone less hopeful perhaps, but more grounded. 17 January remembers that transformation clearly, even if others don't. Dates don't need witnesses. They remember regardless of external validation. This date stays personal, not for social captions or anniversary posts. It lives privately, between breath and heartbeat intervals. 17 January rests inside my calendar like a scar, not bleeding anymore, but visible internally. During certain seasons, I don't fear it. I acknowledge it with respectful distance. Some dates deserve silent recognition, not public explanation. 17 January receives that quiet respect from me. Annually, I pause slightly, breathe differently, think honestly today. Then I continue living, carrying lessons forward, without bitterness now. If you want, just say, 17 January returns, not as pain, but as presence. It sits quietly, beside my routines, observing progress. I no longer flinch when the date appears on glowing screens. Acceptance softened edges of memories once sharp and intrusive. This date now feels like an old scar, not an open wound. Scars tell stories without demanding tears or dramatic retellings. 17 January listens without interrupting. My present becoming, I learned coexistence with memories instead of resistance. Fighting dates exhausts Embracing lessons stabilizes inner weather patterns. This date reminds me how far I walked since emotional collapse. Progress rarely announces itself loudly, especially internal progress. 17 January tracks my evolution silently, year after year. I notice differences in reactions now, less impulsive, more aware. What once shattered now informs decisions with mature restraint. This date sharpened my emotional literacy through lived experience. I learned boundaries aren't punishments, they're protections. 17 January reinforced that truth gently after harsh beginnings. I stopped over-explaining my feelings to uninterested listeners. Not everyone deserves access to vulnerability earned through trust. This day taught discernment, not emotional isolation, but selective openness. I choose carefully now where I place my honesty. 17 January respects that discernment earned through mistakes. I forgive myself for naive moments and hopeful blindness. Self-forgiveness arrived, late but sincere. On this date, some dates mark when compassion turns inward after long neglect. 17 January became that inward turning point for me. I stopped romanticizing suffering as proof of depth. Depth exists without pain, love without chaos, growth without trauma. This date corrected those misconceptions patiently and firmly. I relearned love as calm consistency, not emotional storms. 17 January recalibrated my emotional compass towards steadiness. I value peace now over intensity, clarity over confusion. This day applauds that preference quietly, without ceremony. I stopped revisiting old conversations mentally, looking for different endings. The past stays static, but understanding evolves through present awareness. 17 January approves that realization every time it returns. I breathe easier now when remembering without rewriting history. Truth doesn't need beautification to remain meaningful. This date stands as proof of that principle. I accept what was without justifying it or condemning it. Balance arrives slowly through repeated reflection. On this date, 17 January refined my emotional posture toward neutrality, not indifference, but peaceful acknowledgement without attachment. I no longer measure my worth through someone's departure. This date helped detach self-value from external validation. I rebuilt internally, piece by piece. After that lesson, 17 January remembers the reconstruction phase with quiet pride. Growth isn't glamorous. It's repetitive and often invisible. This date witnessed my quiet consistency better than anyone. I stopped announcing changes and started embodying them daily and silently. 17 January noticed that shift before others did. I trust myself now more than before. Because of this date, Trust born from endurance feels different than inherited confidence. This date contributed to that earned trust significantly. I learned patience with healing timelines, not rushing outcomes. 17 January slowed my urgency toward emotional repair. Some things heal only when given appropriate time. This date taught respect for timing over forceful fixing. I stopped asking why it happened and asked how I changed. That question mattered more than answers I chased earlier. 17 January redirected my focus towards self-inquiry. Inquiry led to clarity. Clarity led to calm. Calm led forward. This date forms a quiet bridge between past and present. I walk it yearly without fear or hesitation. 17 January no longer hurts. It informs and grounds me. Some dates transform from wounds into wisdom markers. This date became one of those. For me, I carry it respectfully, not as burden, but as guidance. 17 January remains not just a number, but a chapter. Say part 3 when you're ready. I'll continue without breaking a single rule.